Hello, everyone. This is Katie Roper with Caring.com, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest in our series of Digital Marketing Academy webinars. Today's webinar is called Message to Yes, Email Nurturing Best Practices. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. We will be sending out this presentation. You'll have it in a few business days. Also, while we encourage you to ask questions, this is a one-way webcast, so you'll need to use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen and type your answers, type your questions in there. I already see one question, and yes, we will be sending out a copy of the PowerPoint. You'll get it in your email within a few days. I'm delighted to be joined today by Tom Goldman, who is a seasoned technology executive who's currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer at SoftVu. They are an email marketing company, and we are using them here at Caring.com. Tom is going to spend most of the time today talking, but I thought I'd set the stage just quickly with some overall thoughts. Tom has been president or CEO at 8 different technology startups over the last 25 years. So he has a long background in building the strategy, teams, and capital to successfully grow small companies into viable and sought-after large companies. Prior to entering the corporate world, Tom was an officer in the United States Air Force for 8 years, where he served as a fighter pilot. He's been married for 32 years, has 2 grown children and 2 grandchildren. I'm going to, as I mentioned, I'm going to cover a few things and then turn it over to Tom. Our final housekeeping item, Caring.com is the sponsor of this webinar. We're the #1 senior care resource online. We have more senior care reviews than any other site, currently at 110,000 and counting. We get 3 million visitors every month visiting our site to read thousands of original articles, to check out all of the listings in our comprehensive directory, to participate in our support groups online. And we're part of Bankrate's network of websites that reaches about 14 million consumers every month. Okay, just a few thoughts on Caring.com email nurturing. And before we dive in, I'm going to launch a poll here. So if you wouldn't mind, we're going to do a quick survey. Are you currently using email to nurture prospects? So if you would pick the most appropriate option and submit, we'll get a little bit of a read on how people are doing this today. We've got about half of you voted, and I will share the results. So go ahead and answer the question, and when we get a few more votes, I'll stop the poll, and you'll be able to see what your colleagues are doing. All right, we've got almost 80% of you having voted. A few more responses. Okay. All right, I'm going to close the poll and let's see what we see. As you can see, most people on this call are already doing email nurturing. Looks like mostly doing it manually, although about 16% are using an agency. About a quarter are not yet doing it. And wow, we didn't have anyone who was not sure. Okay, thank you for that. Let's keep going. There are 2 main reasons to do email nurturing. The first is that email usage is still really high amongst the demographic most concerned with senior care. While the young people are abandoning email in favor of messaging and apps, the internet users in the 50 to 64 demographic, the adult children, 90% of them use email, with 60% using it daily. of their senior parents, the numbers are almost as high. 86% of people over the age of 65 are also on email, and half are using it daily. Email is the #1 activity on smartphones for U.S. adults over the age of 50. And Caring.com is seeing this trend. Last year, for the first time, we crossed over 50% of our visits now come from mobile people, and many of our subscribers are reading their emails on mobile. The second reason that you really ought to think seriously about email nurturing is that a senior care decision, in this case a senior housing decision, can take a while. This is data from our Caregiver Journey survey last year, and what you'll see is that 17% of people take longer than a year to make a senior housing decision, with 5% actually taking more than 3 years. So if you're not staying in touch with people in a nice, non-obtrusive, non-irritating, but helpful way over that time, you're going to lose them before they're ready to actually move in. There are two buckets in planning an email nurture campaign: the technical part of things and the creative part of things. As you can see, here's a list of the steps. When you're putting an email campaign together, you need to set it up. You need actually to send the emails, and then you need to make sure the emails are delivered to the inbox. Those are all the technical side of things. That gets very complicated very quickly. Tom is going to go over that briefly, but most of the people on the call, I think, are more concerned with the creative aspects of an email campaign. That's where we're going to spend the most of our time today. That's how do you get people to open, how do you get people to click or engage with your messaging, how do you get them to take action, and how do you get them to actually start care or move into your community. But of course, you can't do any of those creative and fun things if the emails aren't making it into their inbox. So if you're not technical, what I would encourage you to do is take the presentation when we send it to you and give it to your technical team and just make sure that they're doing all of the things they need to so that your emails get delivered. As I mentioned, Caring does our own email nurturing program. Here are some examples of our assisted living nurture series and our home care nurture series. We also have one for independent living people. You'll see that these are all personalized. We use the first name. We have designed them to be supportive of a senior care decision. And if you're a partner of Caring.com, you show up in those emails. I'm going to make just a quick aside here. You can see that in our emails, we list not only the logo and the photo and the contact information for our partners, but we also list the reviews. So if you've got lots of 5-star reviews, people are going to be much more likely to call your agency or click on the link and view your property than they will if you don't have reviews. Caring recently did some analysis to refine our nurture program. We looked at a number of elements, including email volume and timing. We looked at open and click rates, and we broke everything down based on the subject line of all of our emails. Our nurture series goes on for 2 full years, so we had a lot of emails to look at. And we also had data from our senior housing partners on which people had moved in. So we were able to map open rates and click rates on particular emails and see which one resulted in a concrete action being taken. What we discovered was that we were sending too many messages. Our nurture campaign was actually there was too much of it. But that the best performing subject lines were ones with action-based questions, and in particular questions relevant to search and care needs. Some of the ones that had the highest performance for us were still not sure, try respite care. or hire an agency or an independent caregiver, or how to have the talk with a loved one. The other very popular emails were about the cost of care and government benefits. Another surprising data point we discovered was that click rate isn't necessarily the best measure for evaluating the success of emails. Some emails had 5 or 6 different links in them, and so they had a very high click rate, but they didn't necessarily perform effectively at driving conversions. A single click to schedule a tour can actually be a better result for a nurture email than 5 clicks to read 5 different articles on our blog. So using the data, we were able to trim down our email nurtures to the ones that performed the best and drove the most concrete activity for our partners. But we are not experts at email sending, and so that's where we contracted with SoftVu to handle the technical side of things and work with us on our nurture campaign. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Tom, and he's going to take you through some of the practical tips that you can do to improve your email series. So Tom, you have control.
Thank you, Katie. There we go. I have control now. Katie, you never give up control. It's nice to get control from you. So thank you for that warm introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Or I guess good morning still on the West Coast. As Katie mentioned early in her discussion, why email, our target audience still uses this particular platform in a preponderance of ways. So because it has compatibility across all devices and because you can customize it, but most importantly, because it's extremely cost effective, it is the go-to solution to deliver content to the adult-child demographic. So it is still hugely effective, almost regardless of industry, if you want to communicate to that 50 to 64-year-old age group. So as Katie mentioned, we generally think of email delivery in 2 aspects. One is content, which is the creative side, and for the most part, this is the value of once you get the email into the adult child or the senior resident's inbox, this will demonstrate and prove whether the message actually gets delivered or not. So the creative side is extremely important, and I've broken down a few elements here that we'll kind of discuss in detail. Of all of these, in my opinion, the most important is something that is a term you're going to hear a lot over the next couple years, and that's responsive design. So as Katie pointed out, more than half of the inquiries coming to caring.com, in fact, more than half the inquiries to most people's website across the United States are coming from the user using a mobile device of some kind, whether it's an iPad, some kind of a tablet, or a smartphone. So that shift away from looking at content that way requires us, demands on us to be able to display that content in a way that's very consumable for that particular person. So that content's got to fit on the screen correctly. It's got to have the important elements at the top. It's got to be very thumb friendly. So when these get designed, you actually have to think in terms of how is the user going to interact with the screen that's in front of them, and you have to design it in a way that makes it very easy for them to use it one-handed, because that's how most people will engage with the actual application of the website itself. And then obviously it's got to be compatible for all the email providers. You would be surprised to know that, you know, just because it works on Google or Gmail, it doesn't mean it works on AOL. It works the one where an iPhone 5, it doesn't mean the same thing will be true for the iPhone 6. So keeping that design in mind when you produce it becomes very, very important to make sure that the content you want to deliver actually gets delivered. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. If you look at the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a typical email that gets delivered and opened on a desktop. So it has a lot more information. and the buttons are a lot bigger, and there's a lot more to read. There's a lot more going on with that. You can't get away with that on a mobile device. On a mobile device, it's got to be very crisp. In fact, what we've learned over the last year or so is you have to put the call to action, the click here to learn more button, right at the very top. People do not like having to scroll down to find a click here for more information, or click here to schedule a tour, or click here for more information. It's got to be at the very top. And you can see the content is really stripped down. And it expands. So if people have, you know, a larger font choice on their phone because there might be a little bit hard of seeing, you can expand it and still not lose any of your formatting. So again, responsive design. You're going to hear this a whole lot. It's probably the most important element in terms of delivering content to a mobile device. Subject lines. So this is also a favorite topic for most. Ideally, you have 60 characters to work with. So ideally, that means you're going to use 6 to 10 words. And what we found over the last couple of years, and we are an email platform company, so we send 10 to 12 million emails a month on behalf of our clients. So we have a lot of data that suggests what works well and what doesn't. And what we've learned is that the more you can personalize the subject line, the more effective it's going to be in terms of getting that person to actually open the email and read the rest. And I know that's a little different than probably most of what you see. Normally you see the personalization happening in the body of the text. But the technology, the same technology that allows you to put a first name in the body of the text allows you to put it in the subject line. So do that whenever possible to entice the person to actually open the message. Secondly, do not ask questions. Questions are spam magnets. So if you put a question mark in the subject line, you've increased your odds to a very high degree that that message is never even going to hit the inbox. So make statements, and Katie gave some great examples earlier in her talk about how to get a message across in the subject line without making a statement or without making a question. So really, really, really important. Also, what we found is for viewers' desire to consume what it is you're trying to message them, make sure the topic is specified in the subject line. If you keep it general, the odds are it doesn't get read. So stay very crisp in terms of those 6 to 10 words. You know, use their name, don't ask a question, and then make sure that the topic comes across in the subject line, and you'll increase your odds of getting them to read further and get to the bottom part of your message. Here's some examples of what it would look like. So in the subject line, Jennifer, caring.com is always here for you. It's time to schedule a tour. 5 ways to avoid family blow-ups. Again, no questions, some personalization in there. There's some mention of your companies. So this is a very effective couple of examples for subject line management. So the message content itself. The message copy should be brief and direct. And I think most people have already come to realize this, that 3 or 4 paragraphs of text are not going to get read by hardly anybody. Right? You got to keep it brief. And what we've learned from spam traps and spam filters is if you keep the layout simple and smaller blocks, it looks less spammy to the filters. So if you have a big block of text with 4 or 5 sentences in it, odds are it's not going to make it through. So a simple layout, 1 or 2 sentences per paragraph, and then adjust the grammar and the tone relative to the audience to whom you're talking. So, you know, if you're dealing with adult children, you'll probably have a different tone and attitude in that content than you would maybe seniors. If you are passing on information as opposed to trying to schedule a tour, again, a completely different conversational tone to be using. And then, of course, any kind of personalization is good. If you only have one place to personalize, though, make it in the subject line. Here's an example of what a very brief content would look like. So you can see on the right-hand side, 2 sentences, 1 sentence, very simple, easy to read, also easy to read with a responsive design. So if you've got a mobile device the person's reading from, this is very easy for them to interact with. You can also see that the calls to action are clearly identified. So right here where it says click here to discover 9 government benefits, that's great. Now Katie mentioned something before that we all need to pay really close attention to. Having one link that will take you to 9 benefits is okay. If you embed 9 links in an email, it will never get delivered. The rule of thumb is about 2 to 3 max. So you do not want to put all kinds of links to all kinds of white papers, pictures, all kinds of informational topics in one email, or you're pretty much guaranteeing it's not going to get delivered. So number of links is one of the top things that the spam filters look for. Call to action buttons. So, and I know there were a number of pre-questions kind of around this topic. So call to action buttons do a couple really cool things for you. What they do is they allow you to actually understand what the reader of the message is doing. So if you think about it from this perspective, there's a couple things that people can do. The email can show up in their inbox, and they can be reading it in preview mode and kind of scanning over it and not really paying attention. They can click on it in their inbox, open it up in full view, and either read, ignore, delete. You still really don't know what they've done other than they may have opened the email. But if you put a call to action button in there, whether it's simply like apply now or take a tour or schedule a tour or click here to talk to one of our representatives, what it does is it gives you data to show what the reader is doing with your message. So if they go so far as to actually click on something and it launches a video that they can watch about, you know, the 9 government benefits they should be paying attention to, or it opens a video that has a, you know, a picture collage of your community, those kind of things. Now you're in the tracking world where you can keep track of what they're doing. You can see how they clicked it, how many times they clicked it, from what device did they click it from, how long did they watch it more than once. And this is really important because your email provider should be able to help you, help your salespeople use this information to track interest. So for example, if someone watches the tour once or twice and then they go cold for 6 months and you don't hear from them again, they don't respond to any message you send them, and all of a sudden they go back to this email that they've left in their inbox and they click on the video for the community again, you know something has changed. And that should, if you have an effective email partner, trigger a message back to your salespeople to say, hey, it looks like these folks are interested again. It might be a nice time to reach out to them. So call to action buttons can give you a lot of power in understanding how the reader is interacting with your message. The color and design make it stand out so you can be really creative. You can pretty much put any language on the button that you want, including all caps. So all caps you never, ever, ever want to have in the body of your email because that's a spam target, but you can drop it on top of a button and it appears as an image and they don't see that. So it's perfectly fine to do that. Here's an example of the button being prominent and above the copy, and you can see a second link at the bottom where they click here to learn more. Both perfectly acceptable and stays within that 2 to 3 link requirement for spam filters. External content. So again, this is a way to interact that call to action button with other content you want to deliver to the adult children or to the senior themselves. You can take them by clicking on the button to another landing page. A landing page is just another website page that may have information you want to share. It does not have to be on your website. It could be on anyone's website. So it's just think of it as a redirect button that takes that person where you want them to go. Most effective landing pages will allow you to come back. So if you're taking them to something that's out of your control, maybe not. If you're taking them to some other part of your website or one of your partner's website, they can probably get back to where they started. Other effective content are surveys, e-cards, and videos. Let me hit video just for a second because video is extremely effective at getting people to engage with your message. So the technology exists today. We're using it for a couple of our clients where you can actually personalize a video in real time, believe it or not. So it's very cheap to do. You can record actually a pretty high quality video from your smartphone today. Just pay attention to the lighting. And it could be from the director of your community. It just says, hey, thanks for taking the time to take a look at our community. We're really proud of what we built, and we'd love to show you around. Just give us a call or come by and see us. So that little 10-second video does an amazing job of personalizing the experience for the reader of the email, and it's very simple to embed. For the last 8 years or so that we've been using videos, we found that it increases the engagement rate by 50% on average. So if you want people to engage in your message, personalize it with video. And the technology is here now that allows you to personalize it by name. So they open the video, and it could be the community director saying, Katie, thanks for stopping by our site. It was great to have you visit. Please come see us again. So that technology is here, and you ought to be taking advantage of it. So if you're not using that, please check with your email provider. And here's an example of, again, what it would look like from click here to learn more, and then bouncing them over to an educational landing page where they can learn more. So I hit a lot of this already, but the other thing that I just want to point out on here that I didn't touch was autoplay. That means that the video starts automatically without the reader pushing a play button. Is okay for a desktop, never okay for a mobile. So it really messes up the delivery. So you want to make sure that whoever's doing that for you doesn't do that. And what we have found is that in some industries, professional talent makes sense, but in our senior living communities with whom we engage, we have found that someone at the community is the better spokesperson for that community. So we've been coaching, advising our clients to, find someone a little bit photogenic but really sincere, with a caring, kind of nurturing energy about them, and let them be the spokesperson for your community with a nice little 10 or 15-second message. It works great. And here's an example of what it can look like with the autoplay and then with the manual play button as it comes across on your video. That one's actually a little bit long. You notice that one's 23 seconds. We normally recommend 10 or 15 seconds, which matches most people's attention spans today. So strategy. So this is something that's really important that a lot of communities don't, I think, spend a lot of time thinking about. And that is, have you thought through in advance how you want to engage with someone who is trying to engage with you? So if you get an information request, in on your website, or someone stops by the front desk, or whatever it happens to be, do you have an automated plan to engage with them through some kind of messaging platform? And if you don't, you should, because almost all CRM providers provide that, and all email partners can do that for you as well. You should never leave it to chance that someone's going to follow up. And we see in some communities as much as 50% of the leads never get more than one follow-up. And that just should not happen in this day and age when so much of that should be automated or can be automated. And when I say automated, I don't mean impersonal. It can be a campaign strategy can be something that looks like this, where you sit down with your email provider or your marketing provider or even your internal team and say, what do we want to happen when someone comes to our front desk? Well, we want to get their name and their email address and their phone number, and then we will log that into the system, and we want the system to automatically generate a message email. Or we want the system to send a request over to our call center folks to log in a call. Or we want the system to automatically deliver a one-page brochure to the address of both the adult children and the senior so that they have something they can hold in their hand. So the beauty of it is the strategy can be defined or designed and defined any way that you want it. Whatever way you think your community is going to be served best, it can be done. And once you've built a strategy, 99.9% of that can be automated, so you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens to everyone that shows interest in your community. They get a consistent touch that's very, very personal. I get asked this one a lot. When should you send messages? And this actually shifts from year to year. So, readers have become more sophisticated in terms of when to ignore messages and when to actually read them. Currently, Tuesdays are great days to send messages. So, normally mid-morning works better than late afternoon. If your email provider should be able to time message delivery based on your requirements. So you could tee it all up on Monday, have it all ready to go, and then your email platform should be able to say, okay, I want to deliver these at 9 o'clock local time tomorrow, Tuesday, and the platform should be able to take care of that. If you're not seeing that, you have the wrong platform or you don't have that feature turned on, but that's pretty basic stuff. Again, morning a little more effective than the afternoon. Weekends are horrible. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are not good days for these kinds of deliveries. Sunday, people do get on email, but typically it's work email, and they're ignoring the other stuff, the other marketing stuff. So if you can only email on one day, Tuesday's a pretty good one. Pay particular attention to time of year and the demographic of the people to whom you're sending messages. So, be very sensitive to, on Black Friday, the few days before that, unless you're a retailer, you probably shouldn't waste your time because no one's going to be opening your message. Holiday times are generally pretty bad to do that unless you're advertising a special event being held at your community. That could be different. But other than that, a lot of people put their campaign strategies on automatic and forget to check the calendar, and they're sending out emails when they shouldn't be. So before I get to technical best practice, just quickly on that last slide, the other thing that I would encourage you to avoid like the plague is bulk sends, right? So I know that there are many, many companies out there that are probably calling you trying to sell you email lists. And my advice to you is caveat emptor. If it's cheap for a reason. You are going to get exactly what you pay for. And the reason I'm bringing this up now before we go into the technical stuff is you can very, very quickly in this day and age get blacklisted. So what that means is that no one will receive any messages from your platform at all until you clear up the blacklisting, and that can take months to do. So do not trust the reputation of your community, your email delivery platform, to bulk list providers that are probably sending you at minimum of 50% garbage anyway. And if there's a good percentage of those people who have previously opted out and don't want any emails at all, and you send them one anyway, that's going to do really bad damage to your reputation in the email delivery world. And I'll talk about that here more in a second. So please stay away from those to the best that you can. So I'm going to talk about the technical stuff, and I'm going to talk about very quickly. And really, and I think Katie has the right idea here. If you recognize some of these terms, great. If they resonate with you, that's fine. But make sure that at least somebody at your community and your company is looking at these things, because they are critically important to make sure that your message actually arrives. Now, once it gets there, it's your creative content that's going to allow the reader to interact with it. But if you never get it to the inbox, it almost doesn't matter, right? So I'm going to talk about these things briefly just to kind of give you a high-level knowledge about how they work, and then forward the presentation on to your technical team if you're not sure. Email providers like us, whether it's SoftVu or some other company, they should be able to help you with your strategy. They should help you do custom content, design it so it's very personal. They should be able to give you all kinds of business analytics about what's working and what's not, and then obviously provide the support resources. So if you need an email provider, there's 3 or 4 things right there that you should use to help select the one that's going to be best for you. Spam. So a little trivia for you for Friday night at the bar. Where did that term originate? So for those of you who are old enough to remember, back in 1970, there was a British comedy group called Monty Python's Flying Circus. And they had a skit on TV once talking about the amazing tinned can meat product called Spam. And you may remember they were looking at the menu, and the menu on it had every item on the menu at the restaurant had Spam in it. And they got to the very end of the skit, and there was actually a song created about it, and it was spam, 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 on and on and on and on and on. So about 10 years later, as the early gamers started to come online in the early 1980s, they needed a term to describe very annoying and repetitive emails. And one of them came up with, this is like the Monty Python spam thing. And that's where the word spam got created for purposes of email. Common, repetitive, very annoying kind of message. So you can use that for your Trivia Pursuit game at the bar on Friday night. It is the #1 bane for email delivery people, though, and it's a constant daily struggle to get legitimate messages past the spam filters to actually arrive in the inbox of the people that you want to have read your messages. And your email provider should be giving you all kinds of clues on how to do that. So I'm going to hit a couple of them briefly, and then we'll move on to the other technical stuff. So in the body or the subject line of your message, never, ever, ever use free or use the word offer. Don't use all capitals anywhere except on a call to action button. And we talked about the links. If you have a bad link, too many links, or you have a coding error behind the screen, it will automatically be trapped by the spam filters and it won't make it to the inbox at all. So the #1 thing, however, though, is the people to whom you're communicating must have opted in to receive message. What that means is somewhere along the path, they checked a box that says, yes, I agree to receive email communication from you. So remember that bulk sender list I was talking about? The vast, vast majority of the names on that list are not opted in. They may say they are, but they're not. So you're automatically buying a list on that bulk list of people who've said, don't call me this, don't contact me this way. And every time they report it as spam, it damages your reputation, not the bulk sender's reputation. So stay away from that and make sure that you're only communicating to people who want that communication. I told you that we send 10 to 12 million emails a month on average. We have a pristine reputation in the industry as a legitimate sender of email messages, and you want to make sure that your email provider has the exact, or if you're going to send the emails, make sure that you're following the same rules so you don't get damaged in that. Okay, that's on spam. So these next couple slides, I'm not even going to read them to you. These are terms that the technical people on your team should know right away. If you are not using these technologies, you're making a mistake. So SPF, DCAN, DMARC are basic things that make sure that, think of it as a tollway. So your email's out on the information tollway. You got to make it through the toll booth. You can't get caught speeding. You can't get crossing lines, any of those things. These digital technologies keep you on the road safe and make sure you get to your end destination in time. So all of these 3 or 4 slides will make sense to your technical folks, and just make sure that you ask the question, are we compliant with all these things? Are we using all of these technologies? To include making sure your IP addresses stay secure. This last point on throttling is kind of informational only, and most people don't know this, but the Gmails, Yahoos, AOLs of the world, and the telecom providers like Bell South, PAC, I remember what the PAC one is now, Katie, but they all throttle emails. So if they sense too much coming from one sender all at one time, they'll just slow you down. It's like putting a leash on and pulling it tight. And they can throttle it so much that they may only let in 1 message per hour. So again, if your reputation stays intact and you're sending legitimate messages, the odds of them throttling you go way, way down, and they'll just let your messages go through that highway like all the other high-speed traffic. Tracking technology, cookies, and those kind of things, highly encourage it. They can be used very ethically. They can help you understand how your message performance is and those kind of things. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be used in a a creepy or government way. Just make sure that your technical people are using, the latest technologies so that you can get good analytics about what's. Examples of this could be, you're trying 2 different subject lines to find out which one resonates better with the reader. If you have good tracking technology, it's really easy to be able to determine that. So it can be a great assistance to you. So to recap, all the way back to the beginning, if you only took one thing away from this whole presentation, mobile design is becoming everything. So that responsive design has to be built into your technology to make sure that either your website or your email that you're being sent sizes itself automatically to whatever device that reader has at that moment in time. Be very personal in your marketing. Conversational tone, no caps, not a lot of exclamation marks, that kind of stuff. Use the reader's name whenever possible. Try to use it in the subject line if you can, and that will ensure that the right message is getting to the right person at the right time. Thank you so much for your attention, and Katie, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk today. And Katie, if you're talking, I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you, Tom. That was terrific. What I'd like to do now is open the floor for questions. There's one here, which is a question about demographics for email usage. So boomers and millennials and seniors. The data that we have says that certainly boomers, certainly seniors are using email. In fact, 90% of boomers use email and 80% of people over the age of 65. So it is still a fantastic way to communicate with this audience. If you are trying to reach millennials, you're probably best off using some other sort of messaging app. Tom, here's a question for you. It's about attachments for the email. Should you have attachments, and if so, should you limit the number of them?
Yeah, so our advice is do not send attachments. Instead, make a call to action button on your email that lands on that page. So what you can do is you take, let's say you have an attachment with 5 good tips on there about how to help a parent that's now needs mobile assistance. Take that information and drop it onto a web page, and your web people should be able to do this in like 30 seconds. It's really simple to do. And then put a call to action button on your email that says click here to learn more about mobile assistance. And then that way you can track the interaction of that email. And it's much less likely to get stopped by any filters that may be looking for attachments that are over a certain size. That's the best way to do it.
Okay, what about adding YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter icons to your emails?
Those are all fine if they're direct links back to those platforms. Those don't count as reconnect links. Like call to actions and all those kind of things. So you want to limit the number of actual links to different locations, but the little icons that people put at the bottom of emails, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, all of those are perfectly fine. Those will not trigger the spam filters.
Tom, you talked about tracking, but if you're only going to track a couple of things, what are the most important things to track when you start sending out emails?
Probably the most important thing is, once you've had the call to action button on your email and you know that they've clicked on that to go to the next location, you want to measure the amount of time they spend at the final destination. And that way you can determine if the message is likely being consumed. The other thing that you want to track is the number of times they revisit. So unique clicks versus revisit clicks. I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but revisits have a much higher value in terms of nurturing someone who's interested in your community than a unique visitor. So someone who comes back 4, 5, 6, 7 times, they're really interested, and it'd be really good to know that.
And Tom, where would they find all of these things? These would come from their email sender, is that right?
That's right, and it's the analytics are behind the email provider. So if you're like Google, for example, Gmail analytics can show a lot of that basic stuff. Your email provider should be able to give you very granular information. What you want to do, though, on your very specific emails where you want specific tracking technology, the person who will develop that for you, they drop a little bit of code, kind of behind the scenes, if you will, and that will make it really easy for you to pull out the analytics. Anyone who can do to build a website page or edit a website or any of those things has the skills to do that. It's very, very simple.
Tom, you're going to love this question. I swear I didn't plant it. How does SoftVu compare to Infusionsoft and HubSpot? What range of services does your platform offer?
Yeah, I don't really know Infusion that well. HubSpot I know very well because we use their product. So HubSpot's a great company, and their name really kind of defines what they do. They bring together all of your media platforms onto one platform. So if you have a Facebook page, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, email platforms, other things, you get to bring all those platforms onto one management interface and view the interactions holistically. So you can have a very integrated marketing campaign using all of your tools. We are specialists on the email front. So, while I'll say that HubSpot can send emails, it's kind of like describing, all cars have 4 wheels, but some cars are escorts and some cars are Lamborghinis, and we're at the Lamborghini stage.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That is the end of the questions. If you have other things you'd like to ask, we will have an exit poll when you leave, and you can feel free to type that in. I look forward to welcoming you all next month at our upcoming Digital Marketing Academy webcast. This one will be on multi-generational marketing in senior living. It'll be a recap of the presentation that I'm doing at the upcoming Argentum conference, and I'll be joined by 2 wonderful women who are heads of sales and marketing for senior care communities. Should be lots of fun, and I hope you'll join us. And again, we encourage you to reach out with any questions or anything else that you would need. Here's how to contact me. If you'd like to contact Tom, just check the box in the exit poll when you leave this webinar, or send me an email and I will happily forward him. Thanks, everybody. See you next month.
Thanks, Katie.